Hello and welcome back to the Aerobic Edge podcast. I'm Joost, your coach over at Pace Buddies, and today I'm joined with Erin Carson, a strength coach based in Boulder, Colorado, who carved out a real niche at the intersection of strength, mobility and performance. Erin is the strength coach behind some of the best athletes in the world, including ultra runner legend Courtney Dauwalter, or Taylor Nip, and she brings a refreshingly holistic view to her work. For Erin, it's never just about the muscle, it's about the nervous system, quality of movement, freedom in the body, and even mood and mindset. In this conversation, we get into how a former Division I basketball player from Canada found her way into the endurance world as a strength coach. Why mobility is set at the heart of her coaching, how she works with athletes to put the right kind of stress into the system, and what all of us, whatever our age, can do to move better and age well. It's a rich and very thoughtful conversation with Erin Carson, and I think we all can learn a lot from it. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Erin. Hello, Erin. Welcome to the Aerobic Edge podcast.
It is such a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, me too. I'm really honored that you could join me in this conversation. But before we start off with the conversation, could you maybe tell something about yourself, how you became active in the endurance world?
Yeah, I think my love of sport kind of led me down the road of really appreciating people who enjoy competing. And the definition of competition is so broad. And those that are just trying to find their personal best are super interesting to me. But also people who are looking to be the best in the world are also interesting to me. And I knew I always wanted to be a coach. All of my education is around coaching. I centralized my education towards the body as such an impactful part of human performance. So undergraduate at the University of Colorado in Boulder, Colorado. And the opportunity to come here was mostly from basketball. I'm a basketball player. So I came down to play Division I college basketball. And after basketball, I found a love of running and also triathlon, because I was never going to be a really good runner. I'm a solid runner, but I'm not a super talented runner. So spreading out my aerobic capacity and my talent between swimming and biking and running really led me to find a lot of appreciation for how hard it is, how much dedication it takes, how much discipline it takes, and all of those things are things that I love. And being in Boulder, Colorado, I just had so much access to some of the best in the world, whether it was Dave Scott in triathlon or Kara Goucher in running. Now I've just expanded into even more of the younger athletes, but it began in Boulder. And I think sometimes just being at the right place at the right time and having a passion to be a coach kind of leads us in a direction. So I've been doing it for quite a while. I consider myself somewhat of a niche strength coach around endurance sports because I love endurance sports.
Yeah, and Boulder is the place to be in the endurance world.
It has proven to be such, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us something about your background as a basketball player and how that rolled into your strength work.
The biggest thing for me when I was a kid, basketball is a high skill sport. So you have to be able to have a lot of dexterity, a lot of ball skills, and changes of direction. And it also is a very physical sport. I was identified at the age of 14 as a very good basketball player in Canada. I'm Canadian. And in most countries, when you're good at what you do, the country steps up and supports you in your ascension into international competition, perhaps the Olympics. But that I was really, really lucky because of that. But what we found with me, I was a skinny kid. I was a high skill kid, but I was skinny. And they said, if you want to compete at the international level, you're going to need to get stronger. And of course, this is in the 80s, in the early 80s. It really, football players in America, American football players, they dominate the weight room. And so I started lifting weights with my boyfriend at the time. I was like, I got to put on some muscle. And so we went to the gym together, and I really found an appreciation for how lifting weights could enhance performance in sport. And it really was, before it was an automatic. Like now it's so well held truth that strength training is part of high performance. In those days, it really wasn't. But for me, it elevated me to the next level of performance for myself with basketball and with the Canadian national team. I was part of the Canadian national program for quite a while, led me to get a full ride scholarship. And to me, the strength training component was huge. I went on to have good leadership through college, and it even at such a big university as the University of Colorado. Some of your listeners might follow United States. We have Deion Sanders. We have tons of money, but the basketball team was being trained by the football coaches, and I was like, why are you training me like everybody on the football team? And so that kind of led me down some curiosity down the path to kind of gear my education a little bit more towards, let's train the person for what they actually want to do rather than that. And then I just started building out friends, mentors, really smart people who were thinking similar to me. And we were early. And I feel like that was a really important part of my progression as a strength coach, was let's train them for who they are and who they want to be, but more importantly, what they want to do. So that was a really nice offshoot of my education and thought processes. Yeah.
It's a beautiful holistic view of the person and the sport they want to do. Yeah, very nice. So you're a strength coach, but when I view your online presence, you have a lot of focus on mobility. Why your focus in mobility, and why is it so important?
I think with mobility, so one of the most important anchors of my education is through the Institute of Motion. And even the name of the company, it's an educational company here in the United States. The founder is Canadian, but he does live in the United States. The Institute of Movement, when we really think about that, and I was in early when they were just developing the Institute of Motion, and we were talking then about how being able to move in against gravity and ground, the quality of movement matters. How do we help someone improve the quality of movement? We're not just looking at muscle tissue, we're looking a lot at the nervous system. When you look at the nervous system, you're starting to look at the fascial system, because the nervous system lives within the fascia. When you look at somebody who is happy versus somebody who is unhappy and how they perform, we're like, wow, we're strength coaches, but we're thinking about mood. We're thinking about happiness. We're thinking about freedom. We're thinking about, if somebody's thinking too much, are they really free to move in the most optimized way? And will they, when we think about ourselves, hopefully we've all experienced a little bit of that freedom, whether it was just running down a hill or we got in the zone and we're the flow state. This is to experience that yourself as an athlete makes you want to help other people experience flow state. And when you don't have to think. And as a strength coach, we break that into little pieces, and we're like, how can we help create an environment within the body that encompasses the psychosocial capacity of a human being? We talk about the relaxation of a human being and taking tension out of the system. But then when we look at that, you have to put tension into the system in order for it to adapt to freedom. So whether it's an emotional stress that makes us stronger, we go through hard things in life, but those times make us stronger. Whether we train harder by running faster, I'm not a running coach. I've done a good job of staying in my lane as a strength coach and let the best running coaches in the world be the best running coaches and cycling coaches and triathlon coaches. You guys implement stress into the system. And through doing that in a really beautiful way, people get better. People get more comfortable. They get more confident. Like, there's all these beautiful aspects to performance. So stress into the system hopefully allows a person on race day or on hard training days to find freedom and more capacity, but not thinking about it, you know?
So well said. It's a picture we don't often think about when we think about training or strength. Um, but how do you work on these fields with a runner or a triathlete? What comes into scheduling for something for an athlete?
I think that listening is the first part of the process. I think when you sit down and you listen to a high performance athlete, and we can use somebody like I have the opportunity to be Courtney Dauwalter's strength coach. Courtney is one of the best ultra runners. They know her as the GOAT, the greatest of all time. I'm sure other people will come along and challenge for that role at some point. But the most important first step of working with somebody like a Courtney or something like that is to listen. Where are your opportunities, do you think, to get better? And it's really a fun conversation in the ultra running world, or perhaps in the marathon world, that the freedom to run downhill without thinking, the freedom to just let my feet go without thinking, that's the first step. And then we start to look at the body, and we can kind of dial it into a more scientific assessment. Where in this body do I see an opportunity for me to make an impact on that performance? And sometimes you really have to have a trained eye to see it and find it. So when you're working with the best athletes in the world, it's a little bit harder. When you're working with somebody who's maybe just a regular person, maybe they just want to be the best person they can be, those physical restrictions or that tightness that is in the body will show itself pretty clearly. Like they can't put their arms directly overhead because the thoracic spine doesn't move well, because they've been, working their butt off on the computer, or they've been carrying children around, or they've been driving a car or a truck. Like there's physical aspects of our bodies in our everyday lives and the way we interact with gravity that are typical tightness, patterns of dysfunction, we call them. So we look closely at the foot and the ankle and how it moves. We look closely at the hips and how they move. We look closely at the thoracic spine. And I'm a strength coach. I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not a physio. But being a strength coach, I don't have as many constraints on how I think either. I have the ability to look at the whole body. So if the knee is bothering somebody, I might look first at the thoracic spine. If they're not moving beautifully through the thoracic spine, and I can help free up the upper body through mobility and perhaps using moderate and light loads to enhance mobility and movement as the thoracic spine was designed to move, maybe I can unload some of the stress on the knee, because there'll be more of a shock absorbing ability of the body by having the thoracic spine move better, by having the hips move better. But I'm not trying to fix the knee. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the three key areas of mobility to anchor into a thought. And the teacher of this is a gentleman named Gray Cook. He's a doctor of physical therapy here in the United States. But he really identified that the ankles, the hips, and the thoracic spine are our three key areas of mobility. And should there be tightness or immobility in one of those three, then the knees will suffer, the low back will suffer, the neck will suffer. Perhaps the bottom of the foot, the plantar fasciitis might suffer. So it's a way of looking at the body to enhance movement, to improve health, to improve performance, that is relatively simple. Three key areas, and that's a really big takeaway for everybody. You guys, ankles, hips, thoracic spine.
And with that focus, you set up the body to move well and flexible.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Mobile. It's a tough conversation between flexibility and mobility. One has a neurological control to it, which would be the mobility. You need to be able to get in and out of it consciously. Sometimes flexibility, we're looking more at unconscious, or you can get into a position, but you can't necessarily get out of a position. You're using different, you know what I mean? So they're both important. They're both important, but mobility is not flexibility.
No, exactly. And flexibility is maybe more in the range of motion side, that you can go into a position, but the mobility helps you to steer the mobility and then
Well
steer the
said.
flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah, stretching was kind of where we all began with this thought process. It has a role, but it for me it becomes very short term. We pretty much have proven that you can stretch and enhance the length of a hamstring, and maybe it feels better, and you're like, okay, my hamstrings were tight, now they're no longer tight, and then as soon as you stand up, they're tight again. So that's where strength and mobility start to become very intertwined.
Yeah. Well, you called the hamstring now as an example. Is there some way of self-testing our mobility to see where we could work on?
Yeah, when it comes to, a lot of people think they have tight hamstrings. We have to look at the origin of the hamstrings as they connect and interact with the pelvis. So they attach on the back side of the body at a place called the ischial tuberosity, and that can be pulled into an anterior tilt, the pelvis. And I think we all know that tight hip flexors or an anterior tilt or being stuck in an anterior tilt is a root of the problem. So if you stand and you look in the mirror and you think about your pelvis as a bowl of soup, if you're going to spill the soup out of the front side of the pelvis, then you're going to feel tight hamstrings, because if you're watching this and you can see me, the pelvis is tilted towards the front because you have tight hip flexors. And then on the back, the hamstrings are now asked to lengthen, and they live in stretch. And it doesn't feel good from performance. And I can be really clear that I don't think an anterior tilt is bad. As a matter of fact, most athletic events happen because we are capable of going into an anterior tilt. But there's a difference between being stuck in an anterior tilt because your hip flexors are so chronically tight, your psoas muscle, your big rectus femoris, the big quad muscle, they both cross the hip. And if they are tight and they're really hypertonic, it's very difficult to come back to a neutral pelvis. So from self-assessment, the cue that I would use is that for people to lay on the ground, knees up, feet directly under the knees, and see if you can just flatten your back. And if you can flatten your back to the ground with no ability of a little mouse to run under your low back, under your spine, then you have now achieved a neutral pelvis. And you can take your feet and extend them out just a little bit beyond your knees. And you're asking your hip flexors to lengthen. But if they're tight, your low back is going to want to come off the ground. And so you have to engage the front side of the body, pubic bone to belly button. And you want to pull pubic bone to belly button. And you're engaging pelvic floor, low abdominals, transverse abdominals to find peace and balance so that your hypertonic muscles, the muscles that are very overactive, start to relax. And that's a lot to think about. But I think in the big picture, we need to establish a neutral pelvis. And then we can start having the conversation about hamstrings, because more often than not, if I can get somebody more balanced in their pelvis, more in a better position to go in and out of a pelvic tilt anterior, then we don't even have to talk about tight hamstrings. It's amazing how the conversation just goes away because we find balance. And when we find balance, we then want to go to the point where we start to strengthen the hips in that position. We strengthen the glutes and hamstrings in that position. The front side of the body is very dominant. It wants to drive, like the quads. If you ride your bike so much, like a triathlete is very quad dominant. And that causes a lot of different positions through the pelvis and the femurs. Runners, every single landing, we need this beautiful co-contraction of the quads, the glutes, and the hamstrings. That's the point where most people get injured. It's the landings. It's not driving out of gate. It's in the landings. The faster you run, the harder the landing. The more demand on the co-contraction of the glutes and the quads. So going back to that conversation about the ultra runners wanting freedom to run downhill, If you want freedom to run downhill, that means now you've enhanced the force of your landings even more. Not because you're running faster, but because you're having to land below. Every single landing is a little bit lower because you're running downhill. So the force is huge. So if we can strengthen the glutes and the quads, or excuse me, the glutes and the hamstrings even more, bring them even stronger, then we can have freedom running downhill. Because going back to that feeling of happiness, that feeling of freedom, the flow state, when your body senses danger, you don't get to be in the flow state. You're in danger. You're going to be slower. You're not going to have that freedom to run downhill. But if your nervous system and your brain are happy and they're like, I have all the confidence in the world that my lower body can work together, then you're going to have freedom to run downhill. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. When you're explaining this, I have to think about the athletes I see on YouTube or Instagram who did a fantastic race, which is an enormous endurance feat for them, but they're so happy.
Yeah.
and that's it. That's the nervous system. They are happy because they can run free and they do what they love, and their body is able to do it, and that's why they relax in the endurance event.
That's one of the most beautiful things about endurance sports is it does serve us as somewhat of a therapist. It's like, anytime we can be in nature, be outside, be in the sunshine at the right time of day, it's soul soothing. And my job is to help people stay as strong as they can for as long as they can to enjoy the things they love doing. So.
Well said. That's the perfect mentality. Thank you. Well, you said strengthen some muscles, so maybe that's a good segue into strength work.
Yeah.
How do you approach strength work for a runner or triathlete? But where do you start? Before we continue, if this conversation is resonating with you, chances are you're the kind of runner who wants to train smarter and not harder. That's exactly who I work with at Pace Buddies. I coach recreational runners to achieve their personal best, who are serious about building real aerobic fitness. The kind of fitness that actually shows up on race day. So if you're looking for one-on-one personalized coaching, head over to pacebuddies.com and book a 30-minute free consultation call with me.
For me, and this is going to be important to the listeners to identify kind of where you are. So we have a thing called training age. And training age, if you're just haven't done strength training in your life, then you're going to have a young training age. And the most important thing for you to do is very simple things. But we want as much payout, as much currency that comes back to you in movement, and you acknowledge that it works, so that you're motivated to keep coming back to it. So it has to be high worth kind of movements, but they have to be simple. And so for somebody who has a young training age, don't go for the big high rocks or CrossFit or something like that, because it doesn't have to look like that. Love your running, continue to make your running the most important thing, and get a very simple strength program that you will start to see that you'll feel better and better in your running. You're always going to evaluate your strength program on how you're running, not on how you compare to everyone else in the gym. This is a very important concept, that we maintain a performance mindset. I'm a strength training to be a runner. I'm not just strength training to be a strength trainer, because then all of a sudden it gets very confusing for people. And they think the more weight I lift, the better I run, is absolutely wrong. Yeah. So if you have a young training age, just allow yourself to come slowly bring it slowly into your world. 2 times a week is a really good way of doing that. You don't have to go 4 times a week. You don't have to become a bodybuilder. 2 times a week is really, really good. If you're a little bit older, you have a little bit of experience with strength training, then people are going to have opinions. They're going to be like, well, it makes me sore, or I never saw any outcome benefit. And you might have been because you were young. In our 20s and 30s, we can get away without strength training for a lot of things. But when we start to get to 40 and 50, and I think we can all agree that this is the most important time of our lives. When we're in 20s and 30s, we're just figuring things out. And it's amazing how quickly you heal when you're in your 20s and your 30s. But trust me, guys, when you get to 40, 50, 60, and 70, everything becomes a little bit more important. So if you have that preconceived notion of discomfort from strength training, it's time to revisit it, because there's a lot of people who do what I do, who do it very well, and you shouldn't hurt. Every now and then, just like you would in running, if you go out and do a really hard interval session or a track session, you might feel some tightness. It might be harder to put your shoes on in the morning or even after the session. That's because you've had a physical stimulus that overrode where you used to be. And that's a good thing. As long as you let it heal, that's recovery. We all know that that's super important. So if you have a preconceived notion of strength training, I would encourage you to revisit it. But we have strength coaches that do specialize in endurance sports. And I think you should seek one of those out, whether it's myself or other people. There's a great guy I know in the UK named Chris Hendy, who has his title of his company is Strength for Performance, or Strength for Endurance. I think Strength for Endurance. Mine is Strength for Endurance for Performance. But we specialize with cyclists and runners, and so seek one of us out to help guide you. And if you are already experienced with strength training and you want to take your running to the next level, maybe your strength training program isn't actually impairing your ability for running. Maybe you're doing too much in the weight room, and maybe we can pare that back and create a little bit more simplistic way of thinking about it. There are times throughout the year, just as with our running. So if we're in our off season of running, we don't have any big marathons coming up, we're in that place where we're trying to get fully recovered and we're resetting our health standards for ourselves, that might be a really good time to do some muscle hypertrophy work where we're actually looking to build a little bit of muscle, because endurance athletes are really good at getting rid of muscle by running more. So don't be afraid in maybe a 6 or 8 week period of putting on 3 to 5 pounds of muscle. And whether it's a Garmin scale or some kind of DEXA scan, that we all have the ability to measure our body fat and the amount of muscle we have on our bodies, or bone density. Those are important things that we have more access to than we ever have as regular people. So I do suggest, no matter what stage of life, if you're over 40, you should know how much percentage of your body is muscle. And a Garmin scale is $125. So even if it's pretty good, you're going to get a good idea of how many pounds of muscle you have. And then you assess that every 6 months as we get older to make sure that doesn't decrease. You want to maintain that muscle throughout your life. And so having strategies and having the ability to 3 times a year, maybe 2 times a year, to really focus on building some muscle size is a good idea from a health perspective. As soon as you start running and bringing that mileage back up, you're going to lose some of that muscle. And that's okay, because your running will be better. You won't have to carry it around. That's the biggest fear of a lot of cyclists and runners used to be, I don't want to carry around extra muscle when I'm running. But I think we're starting to find out that it's not bad to do that. There's been really high performance people carrying a little bit more muscle, decreases the chance for injury, improves their metabolic health, improves their immune system. Having muscle fiber be an active part of your metabolism is it's a good health play. So each one of these phases of strength training, whether it's strength and power development, which is really good for sport, muscle hypertrophy, which is really good for life, and then there's muscle strength endurance, which is really good for tissue health. So it's hard to do that all at the same time. It's hard to say, well, I'm trying to get really powerful and strong, but at the same time, I'm trying to put on some muscle. And at the same time, I'm trying to work on my tendons. each one of them will have a different ability to impact us. So sometimes all three are fine. You can't have one without the other, but when you want to focus on building muscle, let's focus on building muscle. Will you get stronger? Yes. Will your tendons get better? Yes. But then there's times to focus just on tendon health and mobility. So
Yeah,
kind of
just like
stays
training
organized.
yeah, yeah, organized, exactly. Yeah, just as running is a periodized system of training, you have different phases to accomplish your goals. It's the same with strength training. So when would you focus on heavy lifting and more on endurance for muscles?
I think when the physical ask of the running is high, that's a really good time to bring the volume in the gym down. So then the quality has to come up. So if most of my runners, like going into the Paris Marathon, I had a professional runner with Team Solomon. I work with their elite athletes. Going into the Paris Marathon, we were doing 20, 25-minute gym sessions that just were very heavy, very simple lifts. But we had 6 months to get to that point. So we prepared for 6 months. And the first little phase was building skill in the gym. Really, I like the way this looks. Okay, we can load it heavier. You like the way it feels. Okay, now we can work together, the athlete and the coach working together to make the decision to bring more load into the equation. As the intervals got harder and the double threshold days and all of the training became much more intricate, it was a time to really simplify what was happening in the gym, because there is neural demand for all of this performance, and the fatigue is real. So we're managing a program with a high fatigue athlete and having them still be happy about coming to the gym. To 20 minutes is doable. 5 exercises, very simple things. Go home, eat, go to sleep, do it all again tomorrow. So as the running intricacy and training gets harder and volume goes up, the gym comes down, because it's hard to have everything be up. When the running is putting in mileage and we're working on aerobic capacity and we're working on not such specific speed demands, that's a good time for the intricacy of the gym to come up. And we can work on more skill and we can work on more loading. We can introduce maybe even some more fatigue in the gym, because the physical ask of the running program is a little bit less. So it's like a seesaw. Hard to have it all the time.
Yeah, it's fatiguing, but also just a neuromuscular demand is just too high. You can't balance everything in high peaks.
Yes, it does become too much, and then it's not free. It will come at a cost. You'll either get sick or you won't. Just performance will be compromised.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point. And I was wondering about the benefits for runners, and I was especially wondering. We all know the last 10, 15 Ks of a marathon is the hardest to complete. Will strength training help us in that final third of a race to stay in a good form and complete the race?
This is probably my most passionate. These are my moments. Like when a runner says, "Oh my God, I felt so good all the way to the end. Like it was so good." That makes me happier than anything, because it's about when you create a program for a runner, you're always thinking about how you can help them, and they always want to finish feeling better. And so if I'm at a race and I'm watching and I'm seeing people just break down, you see what happens. And then you're like, how can I create a program that helps that not happen? And so we look at those 3 key areas of mobility: the ankles, the hips, and the thoracic spine. When it comes to the final part of the race, though, you really start to see the postural components of running become compromised and fatigued. We talk about fatigue resistance. It's a huge topic. Like, how can we create less fatigue in the body? Strength is the answer to that question. And a lot of that is internal strength. So we cannot have this conversation about postural integrity of a runner at the end of a race without talking about the diaphragm and the way that we breathe And most strength coaches won't talk about that. They're just talking about deadlifts, and they're talking about rows, and they're talking about external big muscles. Well, I'm here to tell you, we're going to talk about the diaphragm. We're going to talk about the pelvic floor. We're going to talk about the elevation and decompression of the spine. So the program has to have at least that. Let's talk about it. Like, let's talk about how you breathe. Let's talk about how you hold your body up against gravity. And let's build the program around every moment of every run that you feel tall. One of my key cues is ribs off of hips, because as the ribs get closer to the hips, and you can all do that, and you can see how bad the posture gets.
Yeah.
But if I take a big breath and I expand, and I know Lawrence talks about this, Lawrence Van Langen and I are good friends. We work together. We agree on a lot of things. We challenge each other on a lot of things. But the truth is, the body is like a bed sheet, where you lift from the center of the bed and you lift it up. Everything comes up. The entire fascial system elevates. So if I can create strength in the lift of the body, the elevation of the body, the decompression of the joints, the knees and ankles are going to have a benefit from a better breath pattern, from more attention to the breath, to the expansion of the rib cage. All of that gets better. The position of the head is so important. The ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over ankles, the stack of the body, we call it. Because a forward head, you can see it. You can just get on YouTube and just look at the end of a marathon. How many of those marathoners have their head way out in front of their rib cage, and they've lost their stack? And as soon as so we want to strengthen the stack. We got to strengthen the shoulders. We've got to open the chest. We've got to open the hips. And the strength training program facilitates all of those things, but daily mobility, so that, there's some people who think that strength programs make you tight. And I can imagine that some strength programs do make you tight. So you have to really that's why it's important to have these conversations with people like yourself, because people need to learn that not all strength coaches, like not all running coaches, are created equal. So if you're reading something about a strength program and you're looking at the advertising for the strength program, and all you see is big, heavy dudes with giant shoulders and pecs and, traditional kind of gym guys, that might not be your best choice. But if you look at a website and the person is showing people running marathons and riding bicycles, and it's people that look like you, or like you want to look and feel, that's probably a better path to go down, and then have the conversation. See if they answer you. It's a very important relationship. You don't need to, the run coaches to me are the most important coaches. Your sport coach will always be your most important coach, except when you have a physical deficit. Then maybe the strength coach needs to be more present, and it's not expensive to do that. You can, it's just making the right choice, I guess, about the philosophy. We're not all created equal. We think differently.
Sorry. So true. Thank you, Erin.
Yeah.
You said keep it simple. Is it something we could do at home, in a home gym?
To me, and I used to own a gym. I used to own a big gym where I thought everybody should go to the gym. But even when I thought everybody should go to the gym, I always thought people should have things in the home, because where this conversation began is about people living the best possible life they can live through, we don't all want to win a gold medal. We want to run because it's good for our mental health. It's good for our physical health. But the relationships that surround us help elevate that quality of life as well. So if we become so obsessed about becoming performance freaks and running, now I come home, my family is at home, but I got to go to the gym, this creates a different problem. So having a couple of kettlebells at home, some bands at home, and a program that works for you at home is really important, because I see it as enhancing someone's life, that they just need 10 minutes in the basement, take a shower, and then be present for their spouse or for their friends or for their children or whoever they want to be responsible. And then your presence is important, you know. Your presence in life and how we show up on the planet is way more important than at the time of our last marathon. And I think we can all take a quick survey of our friends, this massive race that was so important to you. The only thing your friends see is that you're doing it and you're committed and you're disciplined. They really don't care how fast you go. They care and they admire the dedication, and because some people just don't have the ability, and they're in awe of you because you do it, not because of how fast you do it.
Yeah.
So I think being present for your family is, and friends and pets and everything, is really important. And so having a home routine, for sure. You don't need a lot of heavy weights. There are times throughout the year where it's helpful to go to the gym. Like I'm talking about periodization, that, you know, and maybe for 6 or 8 weeks. And having been a former gym owner, any gym that won't let you join for 2 months, go find another gym. You know, because we were very famous for these 1-year contracts, and you don't need it for an entire year all the time. You know, you might just need it for 2 months. You want to focus for 2 months in the gym. Sometimes the equipment is a little bit safer. It's a little more accessible. I think there's a time and a place for a gym, but I mostly work out at home, and I work in a gym still. So I kettlebells, they have wonderful adjustable dumbbells now that don't take up much space. I know in the United States we have giant houses. You know, Europe isn't exactly the same, and lots of people live in small apartments, so you don't have a lot of space. But adjustable dumbbells, easy, not expensive. Bands, easy, not expensive. One big stability ball, easy, not expensive. You know, good things to have in the home. And I have lots of routines for people who have simple home gym, because I believe in it.
Yeah, excellent. Well, that was my next question. I think we all agree that we need strength training in our training. But how do we start? And I know you have some programs on your website and Training Peaks. So how do we start implementing our strength training?
For somebody who has a young training age or is incredibly patient and likes the format, I have a few different formats of how I offer programs. Long video format, which has audio, and I coach you through a session. That some people love that format. They have no problem listening to me talk. They have no problem listening to me describe why we're doing what we're doing. I try to get everyone, no matter how their training age is, to start the first 30 to 60 days with long video format, because I think it's important that they learn these underlying fundamentals and philosophies. And I want them to carry those philosophies with them and become part of the way they think about their health and their body and their movement. So I offer long video format. If you have an advanced training age, you've been doing this for a while, then going into the short video format, which is just, I give you a list and there's a video of what the exercise is. Exercise nomenclature is kind of a topic into itself. As an industry, we haven't done a great job of all speaking the same language. I've done a pretty good job of working with a lot of fitness professionals. I took a 2-day class, and to be honest, at the time, I didn't think it was, I was like, why am I doing this? Now I understand why I did it, because I have a way of laying out how I call an exercise. So there's a single leg, double arm, rear foot elevated split squat. So some people would call that a Bulgarian split squat with 2 dumbbells. You know, it's just all over the map. So there's videos, there's names, but there's no audio. And so it's just really easy to go from exercise to exercise to exercise. But to me, understanding why you're doing what you're doing and what the outcome should be is kind of important, which is why I like when people understand. don't just take the list and start doing the list. Mindless movement is not, I think, a good idea. Just doing
Absolutely.
what I tell you is without understanding the why is probably a bit of an issue. So the people that tend to stick with me and see me as a good strength coach for them, they're very thoughtful about the big picture. They do plan to do this the rest of their life. Um, they they don't have time or energy to be injured, so they're committed to finding the balance. A lot of my programs, they really focus. We really focus on the mobility and the movement and the freedom of movement. I had a girl yesterday on the Instagram, and I don't know a lot of the people that follow my programs. I know a lot of them because I do have a more I have layers of relationships with people. They can get pretty close to me if they want to, and I get to know them. But this happened to be a woman that, just like I do Mobility Monday every Monday on YouTube, and you saved my life last week. And I was like, what happened? And she's like, I was wearing some high shoes, and I never wear high shoes. I'm either barefoot or in running shoes. And I went to a party and I fell off the shoes, like I twisted my ankle. And I thought my ankle was broken. And I went to my physical therapist, and they were like, because you do so much mobility, you didn't break your ankle. And so she said, I feel like I should say thank you because so I was like, this is great. So a big outcome of being really mobile and really strong is the ability to fall and get up without hurting yourself. And so it's kind of a good outcome from a bad situation, but those are also very good stories.
Yeah,
I fell and I got up, and I'm like, yes.
and great lessons. It's
Yeah.
it's more than just strength for endurance. It's also strength for the rest of our lives.
Exactly.
Yeah. Where can we find these programs you've talked about? How can we work with you with a strength program?
Yeah, check out EC Fit Strength. So if you just Google that, you're going to find my website. You can find my social media. I'm active but not obsessive about social media. But that's how you and I started chatting too. Like I'm very responsive to messages. If people are going to take the time to reach out to me and ask a question, I'm not so big that I don't answer questions, and I love that about how I've created my world. And I love that we're global, that it doesn't, people talk to me from India and from the UK and from Europe and from Canada and definitely the United States. But it's the beauty, it's the good side of social media. It is that it has connected all of us, and that, so people reach out to me on Instagram, I'm probably going to answer you. If you email me, it might even take a little longer because I get a lot of emails like everybody does. But my website and my first part of my program, choose a layer that works for you. I'm also building out my coaching staff and people that think like me so that we can help more people. Super excited about that. And that's happening
That's
this fall.
great.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck in building that. That sounds really good.
Yeah. Super excited about that.
We mentioned, and with your example, especially about later in life. You said when we're 40, 50, 60, 70s and beyond, it's even more important to be mindful of our strength and mobility. How do you see strength and mobility in our quality of life?
Well, I think the same of anybody. I think we happen to be alive. This is 2026 as we're having this chat, and we're living in an age of artificial intelligence, connection, so much information overload. But we are living at a time where we are learning a tremendous amount about the physiology and longevity of bodies. And it has never been more important, in my opinion, since we know that our outcome at this stage in 2026, we will live longer than perhaps our parents did, and definitely longer than our grandparents. This is a trend that is happening around the world. Because that is the truth, it is our personal responsibility to dictate our vision for how we live, not that we live. So I know that Peter Attia led us to the concept of our marginal decade, that everything that we do today. So if you're listening to us today, your responsibility is to dictate what does your last decade of life look like? And everything you do today, tomorrow, this weekend, will impact what happens in that final decade. We know that alcohol does not serve us. I'm not saying don't drink alcohol, but I'm saying moderate how you're doing that, because it's killing you. It's like poison. And I enjoy a glass of wine, so no judgment. But I think that these little things that we do. So if we can learn from the generations before us, if you look at how an old person carries themselves in Europe, when I go to Mallorca to go ride my bicycle, and we ride through all these little towns, and you see the older generations of people, they have to walk to go get food. In the United States, they just give us food. So we age at a really bad way. We have access to crappy food, like eat good food as much as you possibly can, eat fresh food. The strength training, you just need to look at posture. You need to look genetically. We will all have different DNA. I think I have very good genetics. I can look at my birth mother, and I say it that way because I'm adopted and I didn't know my genetics until I was 50. I can now look at my birth mother and go, okay, I'm going to be blessed. Like, she kicks ass. She is out hiking in her 70s. She's planning her next hiking trip.
Oh, wow.
That is different than the woman that my mom that raised me. Very different genetics. And she died a year after being wheelchair bound, but a very different genetic predisposition. But both people are very close to me now. Well, my mom that raised me actually passed away. Her whole life just got so small because she got so weak, and you could see it. Her head went down, her eyes went down, the weight of her head pulled on the spine. Before you knew it, she couldn't stand up. So posture and breath, the strength of the posterior chain, the backside of the body, how we stand, that we can get our thumbs to the shoulders and squeeze and move the shoulder blades around on the back and reach overhead. You look through the Japanese, the Chinese, the Asian population, they do the Tai Chi. They just generationally have moved better as part of their lives. So when you look down the road, don't take it for granted. It leaves very quickly, especially those of us with really good genetics. If we are feeling good and we're in our 50s, start being active, proactive about your health. Even if your mother might be kicking butt in their 90s, you still have a responsibility to take care of your tissue, hydrate, sleep. A study just came out, I believe, in the last 2 weeks, where we all were talking about sleep and how important sleep is. But now we know the circadian rhythms are even more important. So it's more go to bed with the sun.
Same.
Goes down, wake up when the sun comes up. Like, that's a very easy thing. But they realized that people who did that just went with the sun, lived a higher quality of life, they moved more. With all these wearables that we have, it's going to be incredible how much data they have for how we move. Like the Aura Ring people, I've had an Aura Ring before COVID, so I was an early adapter on the Aura Ring. They have so much health data on me and millions of other people. We're all part of a study. So they're going to learn more and more and more. So, and I'm all for the Aura Ring or the Whoop Band or the Garmin, whatever anybody's using, Apple Watch. Collect your health data.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. It's the natural way of living is the most healthy one. Natural eating, no processed food, circadian rhythm. It all goes back to our natural rhythm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so
well
so
said.
great. Well, Erin, I want to thank you for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. I'm really grateful that you've come to the Aerobic Edge podcast. Is there something we've missed, something you want to say to our listeners?
Yeah, I just think I'm very thankful that they took time to listen. This shows they have a natural level of curiosity of how to be better. And if I can support anybody in any way, just let me know, and let me know where you heard the chat, and we can support each other. And so I really appreciate you taking time to include me in your community, and thank you for everything you're doing for people as well.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, and hopefully we can talk soon again.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode, and thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the Aerobic Ed podcast, the best thing you can do is leave a review at Spotify or Apple Podcast. It just takes a few minutes and helps other runners to find the show. And if you want to take your training to the next level, come and talk to me. I work with recreational runners who want a structured, evidence-based approach to building real aerobic fitness. The first call is free. You'll find the link in the show notes or over at pacebodies.com. Thank you for listening and see you in the next one.